Tension explodes in Belarus as reports claim top generals have refused direct orders from the regime. Whispers of a military revolt are spreading fast. Could this be the moment that ends Lukashenko's rule once and for all? For nearly 3 decades, Belarus has existed under the iron rule of Lukashenko. He has built his power on fear, loyalty, and tight control over the military and security services. But cracks are now appearing in the very foundation that once kept his regime untouchable. Several intelligence reports and independent media outlets claim that high-ranking officers are refusing to execute direct orders from the top, sparking one of the most serious internal crises in years. The revolt reportedly began when orders were issued for troops to prepare new deployments near the southern border. Some generals argued that the move would drag Belarus directly into the war between Russia and Ukraine, something many in the military have tried to avoid. According to sources, 2 generals openly refused the directive, citing moral and national concerns. That act of defiance was enough to ignite a storm within the ranks. This isn't just about soldiers saying no. It's about a political system beginning to fracture from within. Belarus's army has long been portrayed as loyal, disciplined, and obedient. But even the most obedient institutions can reach a breaking point when the pressure becomes unbearable. Officers are tired of being seen as mere extensions of Russian command. They are questioning whether Belarus should continue supporting Moscow's agenda at the cost of its own independence. The internal tension reportedly intensified after Lukashenko's recent meetings with Russian military advisors. Rumors suggest that Russia is pushing Belarus to take a more active role in supporting operations near the Ukrainian border. Many Belarusian generals view this as a betrayal of national interests. They fear that once Belarus is fully involved, their country will become another satellite pawn in a long and costly war. Meanwhile, inside the capital Minsk, the atmosphere is heavy with uncertainty. Government officials are avoiding direct statements, but the silence speaks volumes. Soldiers stationed at various bases are reportedly being monitored for loyalty. Communication lines between units have become unusually restricted. This kind of control measure often signals deep mistrust at the top. Observers say the most remarkable part of this story is that the general's defiance didn't come from radical activists or foreign influence, it came from men who have served the regime for decades. These are not outsiders. These are the insiders who built the very system now standing on shaky ground. Their quiet rebellion could change everything. The military has always been Lukashenko's shield. When protests erupted in 2020 after disputed elections, it was the army and security forces that crushed dissent. But that loyalty came at a cost. Thousands of soldiers watched as civilians were beaten, journalists arrested, and political prisoners disappeared. Over time, that created resentment, guilt, and moral fatigue. Now, 4 years later, many of those same soldiers have grown older, wiser, and more disillusioned. They've seen the consequences of blind obedience. They've seen how their nation's sovereignty has slowly been overshadowed by Russian influence. And perhaps most importantly, they've seen that the people's anger has not disappeared, it's only been silenced. Western analysts are keeping a close eye on the situation. NATO officials have quietly expressed concern that instability in Belarus could spill over into neighboring countries. A fractured military in Belarus could open doors for unpredictable outcomes from civil unrest to border escalations. For Moscow, this is an alarming scenario. Russia relies heavily on Belarus as both a political ally and a strategic buffer. Inside Russia, the Kremlin is watching carefully. Lukashenko has been one of Vladimir Putin's most dependable partners, but even Putin knows that loyalty can crumble when fear no longer works. Russian state media has begun subtly downplaying reports of Belarusian unrest, framing them as Western propaganda. But experts point out that the Kremlin's defensive tone may actually confirm that something serious is happening behind the scenes. So, what happens if the revolt inside the army grows stronger? For starters, Lukashenko's options are limited. He can attempt to purge disloyal generals, but that risks triggering open mutiny. He can call on Russian forces to help stabilize the situation, but that would further erode his domestic legitimacy. Or he can negotiate quietly, offering concessions to regain control, though history shows that dictators rarely choose compromise until it's too late. Meanwhile, the people of Belarus are watching closely. Many citizens who once feared speaking against the government are now finding courage in the general's defiance. Social media posts and encrypted channels have begun celebrating these officers as patriots standing for national integrity. For the first time in years, hope is returning, cautious, fragile, but real. International reactions are mixed. Western governments are publicly condemning the authoritarian structure in Minsk, but privately they're analyzing whether this internal unrest could open new diplomatic opportunities. A Belarus free from Lukashenko's shadow could shift the balance of power in Eastern Europe. But no one knows yet whether this revolt will grow or be crushed before it fully blooms. To understand the gravity of this situation, it helps to remember that Lukashenko's rule has always relied on the illusion of stability. As long as the military obeyed and the streets stayed quiet, he could project strength. But once that illusion breaks, once the army itself questions its orders, the myth of total control collapses. Several anonymous officers have reportedly stated that they are no longer willing to fight for another country's interests. That single sentence reveals a profound shift in mindset. These are not revolutionaries, they are professional soldiers beginning to think independently. And in authoritarian systems, independent thought is often the first step toward change. Across Belarus, families of soldiers are also voicing concern. Many don't want their sons and daughters dragged into geopolitical games that don't serve the nation. Civilian, military trust has eroded. Citizens remember how the army was used to suppress them in the past, but now they see fragments of humanity emerging within the same institution. It's a strange twist of history. The same military that once enforced fear may now become the spark of liberation. Whether this leads to peaceful reform or violent collapse remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the old order is cracking.